Hello and welcome back to the Comic Lyric Podcast, where we comically
and literally
review comics. I'm Ryan, also known as Comic Stan. I love comic books, but my co-host loves
regular books.
But I make him read comic books anyway, and this time I made him read more of the Ultimates and 1 year in one shot issue.
You didn't make me read more of the Ultimates, Ryan. This was a consolation that you gave me so that I didn't quit the podcast after last week.
And I was also up for it as well. But yeah. And with me, as always, my aforementioned ill-fated co-host. That might be wrong for this time. I just did a synonym of doom. Doesn't matter. Anyways, Jamie.
Yo, what's up, motherfuckers? It's high energy time. We read a good fucking comic book. It is time to fucking go.
We should probably read a good thing every week. Don't get your hopes up. That's not going to happen.
Dude, I have had a long-ass day, right? I did work. I did, paid employment. And then I went to a midwife's appointment. They're lovely. Would recommend. And then I poured a subfloor in a cupboard. And then I read comic books. Today has been a day already.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I read comic books, and then I think I sent some memes on some group chats. Made some lunch. It's been an absolute
We
day.
lead very different lives.
A real busy day. And speaking of busy, the Ultimate Universe has been busy.
Fuck, hasn't it been busy?
It's the story just keeps on going, and spoiler, top quality spoiler, it's still great.
It's the gift that keeps on ultimating.
This is technically part 3 of our Ultimates coverage.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it not part 4?
Nah, part 3. I think,
Because we did the Maker thing on its own.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, part 4, yeah. So, this is part 3 of the Ultimate series.
Yeah.
But we did the the Ultimate Universe birth of the, yeah.
Well, because we've done a bunch of it. So, we've done the Ultimate X-Men in its own right.
Yeah, no, sorry. I meant part 3 of the Ultimates specifically.
Oh, sorry, bruv. Yeah, I get you. I get you.
Yeah. But so, yeah, that we've done many parts of the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
This is part 3 of the Ultimates.
Yeah.
There's part 3s of... it's too complex to explain.
We love talking about the Ultimate Universe, guys. We love it.
In the description, all the Ultimates and that related stuff. So you can go back previous episodes where we went from issue 1 to issue 8, and we're starting from issue 9 to issue 12.
Yeah.
But we're also doing the 1 year in one shot issue.
I'm so glad we did that.
Yes.
Because it was so good.
It's all good stuff.
It's all good stuff.
So
I think we should kind of just talk about it all together because it all sort of ties in. So can you give us credits for both up top so we don't have to break the flow? We just get in there and we get to it.
Can I?
No.
What's the word? Propose a separate option, which is going in separate orders. And the only reason I suggest that for this comic specifically is even though there is a running narrative, and one of the things I like about it is every issue feels unique to itself, right? Like it is like a kind of unique story in each issue.
Well, I just meant give us the credits for...
Oh, you mean compared to arting and story?
No. I just think you give us the credits for both.
Right.
And then we jump into the one shot, but then we're just ready to jump into the Ultimates after that.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, we'll go in that order.
Yeah, let's do that.
So, to be fair, I think it is... As far as I've got down, I might not have missed a one shot. I don't know. It's Deniz Camp is the writer of all the Ultimate stuff, right?
Yeah.
And there was a guest artist, Chris Allen, on the Luke Cage issue.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the regular artist is Juan Frigeri. So, yeah. Let's start with the one shot. Arting is the art of the series that has gone on, so we're not going to give it specifics, or we're not going to dedicate a whole part to it like we normally do.
It has continued to look fantastic.
Yes. So starting with the 1 year in one shot, which
God,
I think.
Oh my God, it gave me all of the context I've been gagging for.
Yeah.
So we really got a good look at all of the different leaders of the different parts of the world and who they are.
Do you want to give us a brief story of the one shot?
Oh my God, no, there's a lot going on, Ryan.
Not in the one shot. It's I'll tell you.
Okay, so Nick Fury is running the Hand.
Yes. Which is the Ultimate Universe version of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, but it's run by the Maker.
Yes.
And he invites all of the bigwigs that run the council to a big meeting. And then it turns out he is fed up with...
Oh, by the way, spoilers for all the... Yeah, we're going into spoilers for everything.
He is fed up with and trying to double-cross them. He tries to shoot one and gets like liquidated by the maker essentially, and it turns out
Not the maker, because he's not back yet.
no. So who does it?
Just the council in general, I think.
And it turns-
it's the what's his name? He's the guy whose his son's a mutant and he's draining his blood in an
God, yeah,
IV.
that's so fucked up.
DeCosta, I think his name is.
Yeah.
So he is kind of an existing character, but he's basically a rich guy who's on the council.
But it turns out that this keeps happening, and they just keep implanting.
What I'm pretty sure, it's not confirmed, but I'm pretty sure they are life model decoys, which is a Marvel Universe thing in general, yeah.
So they keep making life model decoys of Nick Fury,
Yeah,
and just
get a new one out.
he runs the show until he gets pissed off with it, and then they liquidate him and get a new one.
Yes.
Which is so fun.
Life model decoys are basically like the replicants from Blade Runner,
Yeah.
where they are synthetic people, but they are still like flesh and bone and stuff.
Isn't
And
Blade Runner in the DC universe?
Blade Runner is not a comic.
No, but I thought
film.
I thought it was like in the DC universe in a weird way.
No? Well, I mean, not that unless you know something I don't know.
Probably not.
But yeah, they are basically fake people. Fury is kind of a fun thing. He's kind of the ultimate spy of, I mean,
Yeah.
him and Black Widow, but he's kind of one of the ultimate spies of the Marvel universe. One of running gags with him. I think it used to be, they don't do as much now, but it was always like, oh no, Nick Fury's been shot. Oh wait, it was a life model decoy.
Yeah.
So there becomes it got to a point where I was like, am I even speaking to the real Nick Fury right now, or are you a life model decoy? It's like you'll know if something happens. So the ultimate spy thing is like, you don't even know if he's in the room when you think he's there, like that kind of level.
But again, like there's not much going on here, but it's great because
It's a world building kind of issue.
Exactly. And if you're invested in the series, starting to get a really good look at all the council was really cool.
Yeah.
Knowing that this version of the Hulk, because we hadn't had it confirmed yet that this version of the Hulk was Banner.
Yes, yeah. I noted that and I was like, there we are.
And
There
it's
he
like,
goes.
oh, great. Grey Hulk is Banner.
I think he is. I don't know if he's meant to be green and he's just a really grayish green or
No,
not.
that's Grey Hulk, baby. Like,
yeah,
that's
but Grey Hulk
Hulk
is normally grayer than this grey.
I think it's grey.
This is like I'm not saying either way. I think it's like that dress thing where people are like, oh, it's a blue and gold, it's a brown and whatever, that thing.
The blue and black or the white
I
and
think
gold
he's
dress.
such a greyish green or greenish grey that it's hard to tell. And maybe that's on purpose.
But he's definitely not traditional Grey Hulk.
Yes.
And he's definitely not traditional Green Hulk.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But he is Grey Hulk, and he's fucking cool.
Yeah.
And I'm so psyched to see more of him. Yeah, I think what they're doing with these one-shots is...
I mean, this is do we count the birth of the universe as a one-shot?
Yeah, I kind of see this as a sequel to the birth of the universe. Like, we got the birth of the universe, now we're seeing it a year in, right?
Yeah, so the birth of the universe it was called Ultimate Invasion, I think it was called. But, I mean, I kind of thought of that as a prelude, and we're splitting hair, we're, debating semantics here now. But, yeah, in a sense, yes, you are correct.
Yeah, and so I think what they're doing with these is they're keeping a lot of these kind of wider revelations out of the comic books or out of the mainline stories so that to preserve them and keep them cool and fun and interesting.
Yeah.
But then for those of us that are already very invested in the Ultimate Universe, it's like, oh, by the way, do you want a bit more world building contexty stuff? Have a one shot.
Yeah. So
and they condense it all in, and it's kind of it's heavy on the world building, but it's metering it out in such a way that they're still enjoyable reads, man.
Yeah, I
was a bit down on the first one, wasn't I?
Yeah, because that was all world building before they'd actually started the story.
But now I'm invested.
Yeah.
I'm like, these are some of the coolest parts, right?
Whereas I was invested in the world building, the Ultimate Invasion prelude, because I knew the characters. I knew the Maker, I knew Miles Morales and his relation to I was invested then. You're now invested, so you see the appeal of it.
Yeah.
Thing with one-shots is, as a medium, it is generally, as part of the comics medium, it is generally just, can we get some extra money out of people? Like, here's an extra story. So I've kind of soured a bit on one-shots. Like, most of my favorite comics don't have one-shots. Because, as we know, we like our concentrated, rich narrative stories, and they don't normally lend themselves to, like, here's a bonus issue, because it's such like a meted out story,
Yeah.
This, I thought, was the best way to do a one-shot. It was adding context to a universe that we're so interested in and still finding stuff out. Like, every new Ultimate series that we've had has given a bit more information about this world. And you're like, and it's all coming together, So this, I probably one of my favorite one-shots I've ever had. Could have been a 2005 best issue of the year, but it came out in December 2004. So
24.
24, yes. So that's...
God, you just zapped us back 20 years.
Yeah, I do that often.
Oh, if only.
Go back and warn about the price of Bitcoin or whatever.
Before we started recording, Ryan and I'm letting them into what happens before.
Sure.
Because now we don't record in the plain white room anymore.
No, now we're in some kind of underground bunker. I think
it's
it might have been where Hitler killed himself. That does come up later in the series.
No, that's why I found it so funny.
Contextually relevant.
And we were talking about like high school parties that we went to together.
Oh yeah, that as well.
And so it's kind of wild that you're now like, oh yeah, 2004, man, good year.
I constantly miss out the 20th episode. Maybe wishful thinking. Maybe.
Yeah.
One shots. Yeah, could have been great. Could have been a number one for this one. I was inspired by the whole Eisner Award things they did. Like, where's the best single issue? So we'll talk about that end of the year. So with this story, again, a lot of world building. I thought what was especially good with it is that it started off with a really good showing of why this world and this dictatorship is so bad, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, slight tangent. It is relevant.
No,
It's a good comparison.
I'm up for this.
I recently watched, as a lot of people did, the Star Wars show Andor.
Yeah.
And great series, best Star Wars. If you like Rogue One, it's the series, but even more like in-depth and character-rich.
I didn't love Rogue One.
Oh, I reckon you would love Andor. Like, it's real good. It's for Star Wars fans who don't like Star Wars. So, but
we've established we're both Star Wars fans, Ryan. This has come up many times on the
podcast.
podcast.
Just because we've consumed a lot of Star Wars media voluntarily doesn't necessarily mean we're fans. So, what's good about Andor, and it was kind of started in Rogue One, but it was continued in Andor, as it showed why the Empire is bad, right?
Yeah.
A lot of Star Wars, it is just quite bold-faced to be like, they're the bad guys. Look at the guys in charge, like Darth Vader, like look at them, or Palpatine, whoever. Look at the stormtroopers. They're called stormtroopers, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, literally named after
the
Nazis.
Exactly. So that was all like,
by the way,
these are the bad guys.
I'm amazed they got away with that.
It was quite on the nose.
Because bear in mind, right, we are nearly 100 years removed from that war. But the Star Wars film started in the 1970s, but 30 short years after that war. I mean, nearly 20 years. Like, it's as near as makes no difference 20 odd years after it ended. And they're like, you know those bad guys that killed all those people? Should we name our bad guys just like after them?
I think they admitted, anyone who took any kind of issue with it was like, it is a cool name for bad guys, though. Stormtroopers. Like,
no, it is cool.
You can knock the Nazis for a lot, but you can't knock them for style. Let's move on. So, gonna cut some of that out.
All of it.
Some of it. So, the thing about Andor, again, showing how the Empire was actually bad, this is achieving a similar thing here. So we know the Maker's a really bad guy because we've met him in this, and he's pretty fucking evil. And he's done some evil stuff. Now we're actually seeing, like, what is the effects of this dictatorship.
Would you like me to recount that part of the story?
Yeah, sure.
So we see a guy grilling in his garden, and it kind of tells you how much of a good guy he is. It's like, so, you know, the things that don't matter are all the testimonials from his friends and the changed tires.
No criminal activity.
Yeah, no criminal
like
record, nothing like that. And then he's grilling.
It's Nick Fury's inner monologue.
Yeah. This whole thing is rife with it, but I'm giving it a free pass.
Contextual.
Giving it a free pass because it's contextual, and I quite like Nick Fury.
Yes.
So anyway, this guy's grilling, and he's like, I think the Ultimates might have a point. And then a fucking thunderbolt just turns him into cinders. And it turns out the Maker has a giant cloud that goes around zapping dissenters.
So the helicarrier is a staple Marvel thing, shield base. We've seen it. We saw it in, there was a crashed one in the Deadpool film when people were like, are they in the same universe? But, the helicarrier staple. The nice addition here is that it's a roving storm cloud or covered by a storm cloud. So I thought that was like a nice little touch to just make people scared, you know. Lovely little bit of dark humor when the response is someone says, target is medium well, and the guy's just charred body is smoking on the floor in front of his family. I was like, that's good stuff.
That's good content.
Yeah. And then we get a little bit on the nose stuff. I criticized it in Absolute Superman last week. I will hold this to the same standard, even though I much prefer this whole text and comic. they then go, the evidence factory is going to have to produce, to knock something up.
And then the narrative team.
And I was like, it's not as bad as Absolute Superman, but, it's still quite on the nose.
I mean, it's almost the same level as 1984.
Yeah, and maybe that's where
1984 uses quite similar language. And nobody's accusing that of being on the nose.
Well, now I am.
Well, I
first.
I think what's really interesting is...
Come at me, George Orwell.
I reread 1984. I was rereading it at my day job because I used to run a library.
Right.
And at the start of the pandemic, I was sat in my library that I knew was about to close, waiting to get the email telling me to go home. And so I locked myself in my office and was just reading. And I read the first book that I could pick up in a day, and it was 1984. And I reread it in 2020 and remember thinking, given how the state of things has gone, this does seem a bit on the nose now, because they're using really explicit terms for things that are actually happening in society. So yeah, I get it. It kind of is a bit on the nose.
Do you think Orwell used it at that time because there wasn't as much anti-establishment language in Western culture?
Yeah, totally. That's why he did it.
Yeah. Whereas now we've got quite a bit of it, which is great. But
also, we are now more aware of the way that our governments are surveilling and trying to control this, right?
More people know the word propaganda.
Yes.
Whereas here, years and years ago, you just mean having a good look at something.
What?
Come on, give us propaganda. That's very funny for British listeners.
People.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the time, propaganda was something that the Nazis did and that we didn't, right?
They're coming up a lot in this episode.
We must have mentioned the Nazis before.
There's a rule. There's a
Nazi
rule with,
Superman.
Yeah. Yes, obviously. There's a rule with online discourse. There's a formula for X amount of messages until someone mentions Hitler. And normally it's in an argument. So it's like, you're just like Hitler.
Yeah. Are you comparing me to Hitler?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the bit on the nose, but overall I like all this. It would be this kind of oppressive estate with the maker because he's had a time machine to create the universe in his actual image.
Yeah.
So if you could have a roving helicarrier that fucking zaps people from orbit because they thought something wrong, this is again leading into that kind of not quite. I made a thing last week about absolute Superman and anti-vax kind of thing. This is a bit thought crime-y, but also that's...
Thought crime is a term that was coined by George Orwell in 1984.
Exactly, yeah. So continuing in that spirit. And to be fair, this stuff all makes sense because in this universe, and which I think has been a good story beat, is the Ultimates are essentially a designated terrorist organization.
Yeah. Because
it's the maker and his council who are like, well, fuck these guys. We're going to make everyone hate them.
These guys are a fucking issue.
Yeah, and they literally they did an inside job explosion and blamed it on the Ultimates.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it all makes sense.
So, the Ultimates.
I was just going
to... Okay, sorry.
I've got little more bits. I mean, you said before, I loved how down and depressing the ending was for Nick Fury.
So bleak.
It felt like I loved the use of the ticking clock watch.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know what it was counting down to.
Yeah.
So you're just like, this is fun. And that's been a common thing in this series, which has worked really well. The constant X amount of months left before the maker comes back, which has been a great use. Love the line talking about the guy, the Costa guy with his son on an IV drip who gives him blood.
Yeah.
And Nick Fury in a monologue just goes, he's got solar powers, so he's a dying son.
Yeah.
It's just like, good one, me.
Good pun.
that was all lined up for me to make this great line. Great splash page with Fury burning up or melting or whatever it was. But again, we're not talking about the art, but I thought there were specific pages where I'm like, you got to mention how good that was. And there was a clue in this, I thought, which was great. In this entire monologue, he's like, why do I work for this evil dictatorship?
Yeah.
And he doesn't really have an answer, but he kind of repeats this what kind of pre-prepared answers people have, where it's like, well, I took a bullet in 44 in my head, and some people say I lost my empathy or my conscience, whether or whatever. And I thought it was so good when at the time I was like, yeah, Fury was around that time because the mainline Fury timeline is really fucked. So he would exist in World War II and today.
Yeah.
So that just didn't register. And then the end was like, oh, these are life model decoy Furies. I was like, the bullet in 44, was that like, how is he alive now?
Yeah.
Like, no one's alive now. Like, there's no, as far as we're aware, we haven't met any kind of immortal people or any kind of bollocks
well,
like
other than
that.
Thor,
yeah, but Asgard, like, that's normal Asgardian lifetime stuff.
Yeah, that's Asgardian stuff.
I liked, there's a reference in something, I can't remember which one it is, but later on, there's a reference to the Punisher being a 70s cop turned vigilante. So I like that they've just kind of kept him in that decade without bothering to bring him here. But yeah, I thought that was a nice little like, oh, that was a clue back there. Lovely stuff. So yeah, Splash, the one issue, year one, highly recommend. If you like Ultimate stuff, add a little thing. And also, we're going to be mentioning it later when we get to the end of the issue. So,
because the other, can we talk about it?
Yeah, so we kind of went in a weird order with how we did this kind of stuff, but they introduce Wolverine that we've already talked about. Wolverine, Winter Soldier. But again, if I was consuming this in order, and I got this issue and I got to the end of it, and I saw that character redesign for Wolverine with the reveal that he was the Winter Soldier, that would have blown my little nerd brains out. And I think it did, because I remember seeing this I remember seeing the news that people were like, oh my God, they're doing Ultimate Wolverine. He's going to be the Winter Soldier. Like, I saw that stuff. I didn't realize, because I was like, I will get to that, so I'm not going to look. I'm looking at the headlines. I'm not going to get too much into it. And then now reading this, I'm like, oh, that was actually a really good reveal.
And then we also get the other Winter Soldier reveal later.
Which
is fucking cool as well, man.
Great stuff.
Great stuff. So, it's awful when I get excited about the comic book, because I lose all my powers of articulation and I just become really excited. I just get really excitable and sweary when the comic's good.
But then, like, if I listen to any kind of podcast to do this kind of stuff, the best are either enthusiastically excited about stuff or absolutely bashing stuff.
Yeah,
we did the bashing. I did the bashing last week.
I didn't even turn up for the bashing.
I forgot to start this episode as I was going to with, and now we start with, did Jamie read the comic this week or not? But you beat me to it. So.
I did read the comics this week. I read all of them. They were really good.
So I'll save it for next week. So this next issue, I think might be my favorite of this batch.
Which one was
Luke Cage issue.
It's a close toss up for me between the Luke Cage issue, the Thor issue, and the Captain America Red Skull issue, because they're all really cool
and very different, which is such a huge credit to this series.
But we get a nod to the Luke Cage issue somewhere else, because they talk about a prison that's been taken over.
Yes, yeah.
And so
I think it's the beginning of this one, isn't it?
Oh, is it the beginning of this one?
Because then that's a nod to the end.
Yeah.
Where we find out why.
So we find out that Luke Cage is in prison.
Yes.
And basically Luke Cage takes over a prison.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, that's one part of it.
Yeah.
And again, spoilers for other issues. I'm just going to keep mentioning that. By the way, if you haven't read the Ultimates, it's still ongoing. You know, you can listen to all these spoilers if you want. And if you like it, you can
There'll be a new issue next month.
There's new issues still coming out. And that's the best part. So Luke Cage, traditionally part of his backstory, if you don't know,
has been that he's been in prison.
Yeah, he was falsely imprisoned.
Yeah.
And it was while in prison that he volunteered for, or maybe not, depending on the iteration. Basically, it was part of a human experimentation where they were like, let's try and make skin bulletproof.
Yeah.
And it worked on him. He escaped as part of the experiment, and he went on to become there's a reference here which is great. He originally was called Power Man.
Yeah.
And there's a little scene where he's explaining, so he's very smart in this. I think he's a smart guy in the mainline universe. I think he's more well-read and educated here because he's been reading books in prison.
He's been in prison for a long time.
And also, he doesn't even know why he went to prison in the first place.
Yeah.
I think we can infer that he was on the maker's list of like, you're a superhero, so fuck you. Like, you're just going to be in prison for this entire time. No experiments on you, not this time. And so there's a bit where he's well read now. He's very educated on like oppression and anti-establishment stuff. Like,
but isn't this
probably read 1984?
Isn't this just the best exploration in new media of the ideas that are in? Have you read? Oh, you wouldn't have read it. There's a book called The New Jim Crow.
Okay. I've heard of it, but that's my extent.
So The New Jim Crow is a book that I would implore all of our listeners to read.
If you're reading the title, that counts.
Yeah. It's a book that basically argues that the American industrial prison complex is the new Jim Crow. Basically, because of the massive rate, the disproportionate incarceration of black people, particularly young black men, particularly for minor drug offences, and the fact that in the American prison system, they do free labour for corporations who own the prison. Essentially, the prison system is a way of wealthy Americans still being able to access slave labour.
There was a documentary, maybe Netflix, but there was a documentary
it's based on the book.
Called the 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, there you go. So so if you don't want to read a book, you can watch a documentary.
But the
about
new
it.
Jim Crow is it's like much better sourced. It's beautifully written. It's really articulate. It is the source for this argument.
Yeah. I'm just saying that, as you well know, there are people like me who are like, here's this thing I recommend. Oh, cool. It's a book. It's like there's a documentary version as well, at the very least.
But I think to have a black superhero character in prison over a game of fucking chess, showing how well educated he is, how articulate he is, talking about the prison system being used for slave labor.
And then finishing it with the phrase, holding a chess pawn and saying it's about power, comma, man. I'm like, that's good stuff.
But I think you know the Superman issue we talked about where we were like, this is really trying to make this cultural argument and it's being really heavy-handed in it?
Yeah. Oh, Absolute Superman.
Absolute Superman. Yeah. This is an example of that being done
really good.
Well.
Yeah. Because he's a character who is kind of telling you the stuff, but it's contextually accurate because he's trying to educate the prisoners around him. We are just seeing that.
Yeah.
It does not feel like, hey, Luke, how'd you get in prison? I don't know. I was 15. I just put in here and I have no idea. We didn't get none of that. We saw it actually happen like a fly on the wall. And then we saw him telling this, like, all this, like, how best to describe it, like theory about power and capitalism and everything like that.
Yeah, I just think this is an example of this is an example of the medium at its best.
Yes, yeah.
It really is, and it's
why the Ultimates is the best.
Yeah, I mean, fucking Marvel at the moment, man. You have to take your hat off to the guys that they've got writing these comics.
To Hickman, who started the series.
Yeah.
And Deniz Camp, who ran with that baton amazingly.
Deniz Camp?
Yes.
Who are they?
I was going to look them up because one thing that's very interesting is they are actually writing I'm almost certain, I'm going to double check this, they are writing a comic for DC right now as well.
Oh, fuck.
And it is the Absolute Martian Manhunter series. And
that's going to be the best thing in the Absolutes.
I've read the first issue already.
Is it good?
It's really good.
Oh, Deniz. Deniz.
I think it might be Denis. I'm going, Denis Villeneuve, the director. Yeah. That's all I'm basing
Denis, man. They're so hot right now. I mean, this is the best Marvel I've ever read.
Yeah, it's up there for me. Like this. In terms of Marvel stuff that I can immediately think of, the only thing that comes close is Hickman stuff. Which this is like kind of area. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this story, I mean, it stands to reason why Tony would have snuck the box into him.
Yeah, I found that really fascinating because we've done the box stuff is a big part of this whole story, right? Yeah. So it's not come out of nowhere.
We see Luke Cage, we see him without his powers.
Yeah.
We know there's a box coming, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, well, how is he going to get the box into a prison?
Sometimes the box gets to people, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So that is still, when it shows, we're like, oh, it's the box.
Yeah.
Like, great.
And so I mean, again, I don't have much to say about this other than that it was so well crafted. It was so well put together.
I've basically just got bits I liked about it.
Yeah, do it, man.
A lot of my stuff is like comic reference knowledge stuff, right? So there's a bit that we see him. So at the end, he's caused a revolution at the prison.
Yeah.
And then Iron Man is like turned...
the Iron Lad.
Iron Lad, yes, in this. He turns up and he's like, hey, like, good job. Do you want to come, join the Ultimates? And he's like, nah, like, I'm going to stay and have them put me in another prison. And I'm going to do the same thing again because this isn't the first time. This is the second time, at least. Because at the beginning, they make the reference. Do you hear about the other prison? Got taken over by the guards or the inmates. Taken over by the inmates, obviously. We now know that was him doing that before, and he's just going to keep doing it. And there's a lovely reference, not to jump too far ahead, but there's a lovely reference later where Ultimate is discussing their strategy, and Captain America literally says him and someone else. I can't remember who the other person was, but he says they're doing more than we are. Like they're actually affecting more change, like in the world, than we are. And Luke Cage is like, what the hell? Like Captain America just compliment me. Very good. So there's a bit at the end where he's standing with all these chains on his wrists and his waist. Yeah. And you see handcuffs hanging off, so you know like what kind of chains they are. That, and he's got something around his head as well. That is a reference to his original costume. So his original costume, he had like silver bracelets on each wrist and like a tiara type thing under his afro and like an open yellow shirt. It was very 70s blaxploitation like esque, which was like what the character's kind of based on. Like he was that very early on, and he's one of like the best aged characters. Like he's kind of grown with society and kind of become like the modern version.
Overly familiar with Luke Cage until this.
He's not a huge character. Like he's one of my favorites.
Fucking cool, man.
Yeah,
so cool.
Do you want to know what his catchphrase is? Which I'm kind of sad they didn't put it in this. His catchphrase is "Sweet Christmas."
Why?
It's just what he says.
He'll just like punch a bad guy in the face and be like, "Sweet Christmas."
Nah, it's like when something good happens.
Right. I mean, okay, yeah.
Best use of it was in the Netflix series.
Yeah.
He'd just been laying some pipe, as the Netflix ones do, Daredevil, Luke Cage, probably some others.
Does Luke Cage enter our pantheon of top shaggers?
I don't know, because he's actually in a monogamous relationship in the mainline series. So he's more monogamous shagger than top shagger.
If you're still laying a lot of pipe.
Oh yeah, he's probably really good at it. I mean, and there's a post-coital bit when the Netflix series, which I won't give away who it is because but it's Jessica Jones.
Cool, good guy.
Who is in the mainline series his wife, and they have a kid together.
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah. We've talked about this.
Kid is like super powered because her mum's really strong and her dad's really strong. So I was like, I wonder what the kid's going to be. So they post coitus, and just to show how great it was, it's just him going, "Sweet Christmas."
Who plays Luke Cage in the Netflix series?
Mike Coulter, who fingers crossed, hopefully might be joining the MCU, bringing back Luke Cage.
As Luke Cage?
I mean, so Charlie Cox, who played Daredevil, he's back already. Born Again series, absolutely amazing. Jessica Jones just recently confirmed.
So it makes sense.
Kristen Ritter, I think her name is, or Kirsten Ritter. But she's now she's going to be in season 2 of Daredevil. Yeah. So that's her come back in. And everyone's like, well, if they got 2 out of 4, like, come on.
If his wife's there.
Well, but they're not married in the Netflix shows.
Oh, fucking hell.
But maybe, fingers crossed,
we could get a Luke Cage, Jessica Jones Netflix marriage.
It'd be on Disney Plus now.
It'll be Disney Plus, wouldn't it? Yeah.
But Luke Cage, fantastic character. He had a Netflix series with 2 series. First one's way better than the second one. Right. But there's one bit I remember, just to give you some context on why I like the character so much. I remember one bit where, I mean, obviously the imagery, and what I talked about later, but the imagery of a black man who is literally bulletproof. Like, at a time, that was like, almost certainly there was some kind of police brutality around that time, or a police killing, murder of a...
black men got shot at a much higher rate by the police. They still do.
Exactly. So for around that time, like, that was quite good to see that was a good use, I think, of the fantasy of superhero stuff.
Fuck you, white America, I'm bulletproof.
Well, yeah, and there's a bit in the series where Method Man from Wu-Tang Clan is playing himself. And he does a rap about the Luke Cage superhero.
That's dope.
Called Bulletproof Love. But I remember he's on the radio just talking about how awesome Luke Cage is. Yeah. And he says, the way he says it, like, I remember like just the phrasing of it was so cool. He's like, I'm not going to do an impression, but he basically says, there's something about seeing a black man bulletproof. And the way he says it's like, it's such reverence. Like, he's like, it's like choking him up almost. And he's so proud to like say those things.
That's cool, man.
So that was a cool bit. Also, they redid the original costume in the Netflix series because he has the wrist things from the experimentation. Yeah. And he grabs some clothes off a washing line, and he's got the head thing as well. And he grabs some clothes off a washing line because he's like escaped in a prison outfit, and he puts them on, and then he catches himself in the mirror, and he's like, you look ridiculous. Jesus Christ. So, yeah, Luke Cage, fantastic use in this.
Yeah,
I
really cool.
don't think there's much else. Just that he's a great revolutionary character in this, and I think that was a good use of the character. So, next issue was the Thor one, I think. Let me just double check that because I might have that wrong.
I enjoy that these were kind of a series of one-shots. Yeah, issue 10 was Thor.
No, so issue 10 was the Captain America Red Skull one.
Oh, so dude.
Which opens with Adolf Hitler getting burnt alive by the Human Torch.
Which is weird because
it's one of the best comic openings I've ever seen.
So we've already seen Captain America kill Hitler, haven't we? It's an iconic cover.
Punching Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we get to see the Human Torch. So Chris Evans has now fucked Hitler
Different
twice.
Human Torch.
Well, yeah, but
it's a different character.
Chris Evans is both the Human Torch and
No, this is a different Human Torch to the Fantastic Four Human Torch. So
it is,
very, very interesting. Another tangent. I'll try and keep this short. So in the original 60s, or even before that, but during the war, the characters who were fighting this war, fighting in World War II, were Captain America and Bucky, Namor, the Submariner, and the Human Torch.
Right.
This Human Torch was a robot who who was designed to just set on fire and fly around and stuff, called Jim something. I can't remember his surname.
Yeah.
But so, and then when, I don't know if that was Marvel at the time, there's probably Timely Comics maybe even.
Yeah.
But, then obviously Captain America wasn't, he was used sporadically in the time, but it wasn't proper Marvel. Then when it was proper Marvel, they did the Avengers, and he was thawed from the ice. They were like, bloody hell, do you remember? They'd already used Human Torch, I think, for the Fantastic Four one. So, or they owned the name from the character, and they were like, well, let's use it for this other character, for this other thing. So yeah, it's 2 Human Torches, basically.
So this one is the robot Human Torch?
Yes, this is the robot
I didn't get that.
Right. I think he does talk about being a robot in the thing. I mean, I understand why you'd be confused if there's 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if they even call him the Human Torch in this, but there is a great bit where he's talking about deleting memories because he's been for so long.
That all makes sense now because he's like, I could play the piano at one point, and I was like, that doesn't sound like the Human Torch. He's like a dumb kid.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy, this robot, talking about someone's like, hey, how do you still remember that, or how does it feel, whatever? And he's like, well, because I've been alive since the war, I've had to delete memories to free up space. He's technically the oldest computer in the world because he was a computer in World War II, apparently. So he's like, I had to give up this. I had to give up when I received the Medal of Honor and friends.
Burning Hitler I've kept in full color high definition.
And it keeps me warm, which is when he's just having a little smirk when he says it, which is just great. And then Captain America's like, speaking of killing Nazis, let's go kill some Nazis.
Well, yeah, because they're like, basically this is a whole episode of classic Captain America Nazi killing.
Yes.
With the massive twist at the end, which I kind of saw coming, kind of didn't.
Yeah, I saw it coming once we got to, who is it? I was like, okay, this is a really good nod to an existing kind of reveal.
Yeah.
So, again, spoilers for every issue. I'm saying that every time. I cannot stress this enough.
Bucky Barnes is the current Red Skull.
Yes, and the Red Skull in this is more of a right-wing militia organization leader rather than the proper Red Skull.
Very fucking pertinent.
Yes.
Given if you open your phone and open Facebook right now and you see what's going on in America.
I mean, this was a really good, a comic version for this universe of real-life stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a militia encampment that they're sneaking up on.
Yeah.
They can't charge it. This is one of the few areas that's outside the Maker's control.
Yeah.
Because even the Maker's like, we can't storm it because they've got kids in there. Yeah. And even the Maker's like, it's not worth it for the sake of bad publicity.
Yeah.
For, causing collateral damage of children.
Not stupid.
Exactly, yeah. So the Ultimates, they're like, we've got to sneak in. And they're talking about, the place is called Castletown.
Yeah.
So it's named after the Punisher. So it's a really, again, just rich world building stuff here, where it's like the Punisher existed in the 70s. He was a cop turned vigilante. He did all this Punisher stuff, presumably. And enough that in the modern day, this militia group are inspired by his tactics and his kind of general stance and have adopted himself, even though the Punisher had nothing to do with Nazi ideology or anything like that.
Although they do bring him out at a certain point, don't they? So
no, that's not the Punisher.
Oh, is it just a guy in a Punisher t-shirt?
Yeah, so he's wearing it because that's what they're all wearing. That character is John Walker, aka US Agent. So US Agent, a lot of this they've done in the MCU recently, in the Thunderbolts movie, actually.
Right.
Well, it was done in Captain America. It was done in Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show. But what happened is they were like, well, Cap's gone. Let's make our own Captain America. Here's this John Walker guy. We've made a super serum, like we've pieced one together, and he's going to be the new Captain America. And then it turns out you can't just make anyone Captain America because sometimes people get superpowers and then they go a bit bad.
Because they need to be good guy Steve Rogers.
Exactly.
They need to be Steve Rogers, who is an absolute champ.
The great line from the Captain America, the First Avenger movie is, you don't need to be a perfect man or a perfect soldier. You just need to be a good man. And it's like, that's why Steve Rogers is the best. So yeah, John Walker, he's like, well, if I can't be Captain America, I'm going to call myself US Agent, and I'm going to be mostly bad. Yeah. So that's kind of what they've done here. But yeah, I thought it was interesting, again, because there is a real life thing about people putting the Punisher logo on like their guns and uniforms and stuff. Yeah. And they've actually done that in the latest Daredevil series, because Daredevil, there's corrupt cops who wear that as like a kind of, if we could just take out all the filth like the Punisher does, like we'd be fucking, that'd be so much easier and that kind of thing. And the Punisher is like, fuck these clowns. Like, fuck these fanboy copycat assholes. There's been a Punisher comic, which was really great example of this, where the couple of police like, hey, you're Frank Castle, like shows him the logo, like, yeah, we're with you, man, like that kind of thing. And Punisher's like, you gotta be absolutely fucking embarrassing, like you're gonna be so embarrassed to yourselves. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, I do because I'm fucked up, basically. Like it's a compulsion in me, but I'm just a crazy guy who does it, basically. You guys are meant to be public servants, like you guys are meant to actually uphold law and order. If you're doing anything like I'm doing, then you're fucking shit at your job.
You're stupid,
yeah, basically. So
infantile.
So I like that they were bringing that in while also merging it with the Red Skull stuff, because it's like, this ideology we're cherry picking, but then we're adding it to our ideology, which is Nazi ideology.
But again, just a really great issue. I mean, this was more kind of an action comic.
Yeah, this was a lot of action and plot happening. And it's what's so good about the series is it has these issues when it needs them. Like the pacing of the whole series is so good when you think about the bits of, let's tell some story, let's build the world, and then let's have some action.
Well, those first two kind of runs of the Ultimates that we saw with this continuous Doom Iron Man story,
yes,
and then these next sort of 4 issues that we've read.
Yeah, for issues 9 to 12. So 9, 10, 11, 12, yeah.
So 9, 10, and then 11 were all very kind of one-shotty. Like, here's just what's going on in these 3 different pictures, and then finally 12 kind of brought us back.
Yeah, and then brings together the stories from the previous, or like bits from the previous 3.
What we start to see here is, because in the first issue we see somebody goes to visit Tony completely zonked out. In this issue, he's strapped himself up to a bunch of machinery.
Yeah.
And he's kind of lucid now, but can't move. And then in the last issue, it's like, no, fucking Tony's back.
But then it's explained. There's a bunch of stuff explained in the last issue, which we will get to. It's all great stuff. But in this, I really like that image of him. He's watching the screens. He's like, I just need something to do.
Yeah.
Like, why? It's like, well, I'm currently being operated on by a machine with no anesthesia, so I just need something to distract myself.
Yeah.
It's like the image as well of like his back is open and there's like the bits going into him and stuff.
What young Tony Stark chooses to do is systematically delete all of the Red Skull content from the internet and drain their bank accounts. Because why the fuck not, Tony?
Yeah.
Why the fuck not?
Lots of little stuff which was really fun here. Like, I like they state how the Red Skull. So he's got this kind of mask, like it's a technological helmet for the Red Skull. They point out at one point that he's got like a charisma like thing adding to his voice. I thought that's a great metaphor for cult leaders, because it's like artificial charisma as part of leading this militia, which I thought was cool. Like you said, Human Torch is burning the shit out of John Walker's face to the point where someone, I think Captain America's like, Jesus, Jim, like, didn't need to do that. the reason they're going in the first place is because they're rescuing the corpse of Namor the Submariner, which I think, again, reference to what they did in the war and stuff. I think there's so many nice little interesting details.
Yeah.
It's so well thought out. Like, so offhanded that I can't even mention them all. But just, again, as an example, the Namor's body when he was executed underwater in Atlantis, wherever it is, his body didn't rot or decay in the water because people think he was the true king of the ocean, so none of the life forms would feed on his body, like the bacteria stuff. Whether that's true or not, I think is rightfully open to interpretation. And
but
that's
it's
how
cool.
they've done it. But yeah, it's just such a cool little detail. So yeah, loads of little bits in this. I think overall with this issue, I have started to see a little bit of the strings behind how they do kind of stuff. This is very it's the same structure to like the White House issue from way back.
Yeah.
Where it's like we're storming a place, we're getting a thing, or we're rescuing a thing, and then there's a big bad, and then we have a bit of a fight, and then
that is just the structure of a well-written action comic.
Well, it's just working. It's working well. Like the specifics are like them going to a place that's either sneaking or fighting in or whatever.
Yeah.
But like if they use the same vehicle as many times as they have, which is once every couple of issues, like it's once every 5 or 10 issues potentially. However often they're using it, as long as they keep it fresh, like different enemies, different setting, and it's still like telling backstory and stuff.
And the thing is, this stuff becomes stale when it's the same guy with the same powers using them the same way.
Exactly,
but
yes.
what we're seeing here is these different combinations of the Ultimates with different power sets. And so the way they approach this task is different every time.
Yeah.
And so that to me is like the idea of breaking into a place to get a MacGuffin is classic action movie shit. But the Raid is still good.
Yeah, it's still good to
like,
see.
The Raid is a great film, and that is just a guy fighting his way up a fucking car park. But
John Wick is literally exactly that.
Yeah, it's a dude with the skills to fight or otherwise get his way through a thing or her way through a thing, their way through a thing to a goal. But if you can give me unique power sets and present that in unique ways, I'm going to lap it up every single time.
And we're seeing interactions between the characters, which is unique to this story as well. So yeah, it's all good stuff. I just thought it's interesting noting like, oh, they're doing this structure again. But I'm like, if it's this good every time, give it to me 100 times. Like, let's go. End of this, like you kind of intuit over. Do you want to tell me what the big? Oh, I mean, you did. Sorry, you said what the big twist at the end is. Bucky Barnes is the Red Skull. It's done in a way where it's almost like a homage to the original Winter Soldier reveal, to the point where Captain America does the literal same realization, going Bucky, and that's exactly what happens in the Winter Soldier. Like reveal.
Again, we have got a really fun novel Winter Soldier story elsewhere in the Ultimates with Wolverine, and now we get to have Steve all over again being a bit upset that Bucky's an arsehole.
And I think what's interesting here is, I think you're going the same route I am. I think it's going to be, he's not brainwashed this time.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, there is some other reason, but it's not, he's just this way. I think events have changed him, and he's not under mind control like in the mainline universe.
Because he seems to be in charge here.
Seems to be. I mean, he's far more dynamic about everything than in the original Winter Soldier, where he appeared to be brainwashed.
Yeah.
He didn't recognize anyone. Whereas in this, he's like, maybe you'll know me. Like that. It's like, you've been real evil about this. Real evil genius.
All he's missing is like a mustache twirl.
Exactly, yeah.
Ha, maybe you'll recognize me, Steve.
Exactly. And that's what's like, he's not like, I'm troubled by the things I did. It's like, no, you're enjoying this. Like,
you like being a Nazi, sir.
And that's interesting.
Yeah,
again,
that's cool.
The whole thing we keep saying about the Ultimate Universe, and even the Absolute Universe does this to an extent. I just think the Ultimate Universe does it better. It's those little the right changes to contextually make it enough different that we're getting a new thing, but it still all kind of runs parallel to the originals, you know? So, yeah, great stuff. Next one is the Thor Asgard issue, which had a very unique narrative device in this. Do you want to explain it?
No, go on.
So basically, it's just it's not a set kind of style, but it's all poetry, the way the narrative is done. And each kind of block or box on its own it's almost its own self-contained poem, but it's a continuing narrative throughout the thing.
But you know what's really interesting?
Go on.
That is how the prose edda So there's two halves of the Prose Edda. There's the Poetica Edda and the Prose Edda. The Edda Poetica, and I'm probably butchering the name there, but essentially there's two halves of the Norse mythology as presented by Snorri Sturluson, who was the bloke who wrote all this stuff down, and half of it is presented as poetry.
That's good.
And there are some really nice little nods to the actual Prose Edda, which I've never seen in a Thor comic before. So if you go back in the annals of history, there is a podcast episode where Ryan and I talk about Thor, and I talk about the Norse mythology, which I spent a good year of my life absolutely obsessed with. And Ryan talks about the way that these characters are presented in the Marvel universe. So, you know the bit where they go and visit the brothers Ansari, the dwarves?
Yes, I only know them because they're in the God of War game.
Yeah, so they meet these dwarves and they go and they ask them to make something, and they're negotiating on price. And they bring them like a bird entirely made out of air, right? That is a reference to when they made the fetters that bind Fenrir the wolf. So in the Norse mythology, Loki has 3 children. He has Jormungand the world serpent, Fenrir the wolf, and Hel, who half of her, if you split her down the middle, sort of horizontally left to right, half of her is like a beautiful young girl, the other half is a skeleton. And she lives in Niflheim and shepherds the unworthy dead who don't get to be in Valhalla to the afterlife, right? When they fetter Fenrir, the dwarves use the roots of a mountain, the sound of a cat's footstep, like all things that don't exist, to make a silken thread that can bind this giant wolf to the floor. And so it's a reference to the weird materials that they need for what they make.
Yeah.
But there's an even better reference, and like such an on-the-nose reference to the Norse mythology in there. And I would like to refer our listeners to a YouTube video that I made called The Treasures of the Gods on my YouTube channel, Myths for Sad Grown-Ups, which is still up and you can still go and watch. At the end of the story, where essentially Loki needs new hair for Thor's wife, he steals Sif's hair. Now, Sif here is a warrior. In the Norse mythology, she's just a beautiful blonde Scandinavian woman. And he needs to trick the dwarves into making it. A whole bunch of shit happens. And at the end of it, there is a competition between the dwarves who made the things for Loki and the dwarves who made treasures for the other gods. And one of those treasures is Mjolnir.
Right.
They make Thor's hammer.
I know that name.
But the handle ends up being too short because Loki is disguised himself as a fly and is biting one of those two brothers' faces as they work the bellows.
Right.
And that's why that's why Mjolnir has a short handle. At the very end of that story, Loki bargains with his own life and promises them his head, but he lawyers it because he didn't allow them his neck. So they had no way of cutting the fucking thing off.
Right.
Here, Sif says, if you do this for us, you can have Loki's head and we'll throw the neck in for free this time. It is like a picture perfect reference to the first story in the Prose Edda.
Yeah.
Like it directly is it's like they're really grounding this story in the Norse mythology, which is fucking dope, because what we then see is that the dwarves who used to like essentially rule the roost in their world, in the Dark Realm, and again, they weren't dwarves in the Norse mythology. They were called dwarves, but really they were more like dark elves. They now work in a factory and they're just churning stuff out, and it's like, wow, the Maker's Reach has even gotten to Asgard.
Well, I think what we know for sure is that the Maker helped put Loki on the throne.
Yeah.
So potentially everything under that could be Loki, and Maker's just like, as long as Thor's in prison, you could do whatever else you want. But that's the one requirement. So yeah, that makes sense. In terms of this issue, I initially was not a big fan of the way it was laid out and everything, and everything it was doing, because for that part, for the kind of first half, it's like, and then they went to this realm, and it was like this, and then they went to this realm, and it was like this, and then they spoke to the dwarves, and they were negotiating this, whatever. I was kind of a bit like, this feels a lot more like I'm just being told a lot of stuff that's happening, rather than stuff's actually happening. But then the story really picks up, and it pulled me in, and that's when I started enjoying the narrative poetry style.
This is familiar to me because as an English graduate, I'm familiar with the format of an epic poem.
And as a fan of the Norse mythology.
Yeah, and so, I mean, how often do you get a comic book that's presented as an epic poem?
Oh, yeah, no. Once I was more drawn into the story, I far more appreciated the poetry style because I was actually like reading it for like, oh, what's happening here now? Whereas I've read so many comics where it's been that kind of like a narrative is telling the story as contextually to someone else in the future or whatever. And it's like, then they did this and then they did this. And I'm like, this is kind of boring. But as soon as I was drawn in, I was like, oh, this is really good, actually.
I understand what you mean. I think this type of narrative storytelling where you just have a narrator narrating what's happening to you.
Yeah.
To me, poetry gets a free pass.
Oh, yeah. And
there is
just me.
A level of skill that is required to physically put words together in such a way that you are presenting them in a poetic fashion, but still making them mean what they need to mean to push a narrative along.
Yeah.
And so for me, this was like a really cool nod to what the prose edda actually is its core. Because the prose edda is all narrated by an omniscient narrator. Even when you get the poetic bits, there's moments where it's kind of implied that you're hearing Odin's voice, but not really. And then all of the stories in the Norse mythology are narrated by an omniscient narrator who isn't present in the story. And so for me, the fact that they made the most concerted effort I've ever seen from a Thor comic to really pay homage to those stories and what they meant and the way that they were presented, to me, this was a fucking like 6-pointer straight out of the park.
Yep, I'm in total agreement in terms of like what they achieved. Like it's a high fucking achievement, just this comic in general.
But I can see why somebody who didn't spend their late teens and early 20s reading epic poetry would have been confronted with this and gone, oh, what the fuck is this?
But I'll tell you what, it was at the point where, and this sounds dumb, it was at the point where we're shown that Thor and Sif were getting together.
Yeah.
But it was that point where I was like, oh, something like some actual plot is happening now. And I almost was a little bit like, I shouldn't have doubted. Like the first half being like, and then they went here and did this, and then they went here and did this. And I was like, this would be hard for me to pay attention to in just normal comic book style, let alone with for me, a slightly more impenetrable poem style. Yeah. But then as soon as I was like, oh, hang on, something's happening now, because then it's like, then we cut to this. And I'm like, oh, but so we're learning the changes in their relationship and stuff. So because my curiosity was piqued with that plot point, I then was reading the poetry to be like, what's actually happening? So I was like, that, and then I had a bigger appreciation for, and I was like, they've written this really well. Yeah, I'll admit to something that you have experienced. I think for the first half, I started skimming it. Yeah, so I was like, now we're in Niflheim, and this is how. Now we're in here. So I skimmed it, but once it got interesting, I locked in. Yeah. So past that point, we then get them actually getting people together, and they're like going to actually fight Loki and his forces. So I think that's what happened, right? So that's all really interesting. And then I think the best part was then it's like, but back to, so no, this is the point that I got. It wasn't Thor and Sif just getting together. It's the fact that she woke up and Thor came back from outside with singed hands. Yeah. So I was like, something's happening. Yeah. Like, that's why I was like, I need to pay attention now. So then we cut back to like, they're about to fight Loki and his forces. It's like, but let's cut back to Thor and what happened there.
Which, by the way, is the art of the prose edda.
And is that not something to do with Ragnarok?
That's what Ragnarok is.
Is Surtur destroying Asgard? Yeah.
And so Ragnarok is Loki. So Loki gets chased out of Asgard for a bunch of shit that he does. And he ends up in a cave with a vat of acid dripping on his face, and his poor, long-suffering wife has to spend the rest of eternity, essentially, until Ragnarok, holding a bucket over his head and then running really quickly to empty it out while his face is being burnt with acid until she can get back to him. And that is why Loki eventually just goes, fuck this, and he breaks out and he starts Ragnarok.
Yeah, I probably would too in the same situation.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, this, in a roundabout way, this isn't a comic book retelling of the prose edda, but it's
paying heavy homage to it.
In a way that comics never do. Like, we don't get all the bullshit about Loki being Thor's brother in this.
I think that's still true here, but they're not addressing it.
Then they're not. Well, again, I didn't see any textual evidence for it, so I don't know that they're pushing that.
Yeah, the only reason I think that is because I think that's how it was in the original Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why.
But again, they're not pushing this sort of delineated narrative about who all the gods are.
Yeah.
Like, Loki is just a force to be reckoned with here. And yeah, I thought this was really cool, man. I mean, if we were presented with a comic book which was narrated as an epic poem, if you told me that's what we were reading next week, I wouldn't expect it to be a Marvel comic.
Yeah.
I would expect it to be, I wouldn't even expect that to be an image or an image comic. I would expect that to be something indie published all the way out of left field that you would have to hunt for. And we got it in the Ultimates. Like,
in the
Ultimates
universe.
gave me that. I didn't know I needed a Thor comic that was narrated as poetry that paid. Well, actually, I probably could have told you that I would have wanted that.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think as comic book fans, we weren't asking for. And now we've got it. And it's like, yeah, that was cool.
I also think if I told you about it beforehand, I think you'd be surprised by how well executed it was.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, hail the patron saints, Jonathan Hickman and Deniz Camp, for bringing us this.
Yeah, it's just hit after hit, man.
And great bit where there was no dialogue in this issue until the line where near the end where Thor is speaking to Sir and it's revealed that they're making an agreement. Great splash panel of Thor shaking hands with this giant fire demon. And the first line of dialogue is Thor telling Sir, as part of this deal, burn it all down. And I thought that's great as well. And that's where he was. So that's the singed hand thing and everything. And
but
also,
it kind of gives us it essentially means that it's flipped the script on it, and now Thor is the one who's starting Ragnarok.
Hey, it's Ryan from the future. We've discovered something in the edit that for some reason my microphone gets a bit distorted for the last 15 minutes of this episode. No idea why it's happened, and unfortunately we can't do anything about it now that's recorded. So just warning you now, I said you'll hear distortion on my microphone is for the last 15 minutes. If you want to continue or not with the episode, you know, up to you. If you're not able to enjoy the recital me and Jamie did of Chip Zdarsky fan fiction, then maybe if I can convince Jamie, we'll redo it in the next episode with hopefully properly working microphones. But yeah, just a heads up, just to let you know. Which is also what they did in Thor Ragnarok film.
Yeah.
He's like, actually, I'm going to start Ragnarok. That's actually the best thing.
We're just going to go do Ragnarok.
Yeah. And also, I love the little bit of how they describe Midgard. So they cut to Tony Stark at the end. Midgard. It's like, Midgard, home to mortals, microwaves, and linear time. And I was like, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, final issue of this set, the issue 12.
And it becomes very Ultimates heavy again.
It's like everything is happening now. It's a confrontation between Iron Lad and Doom. But Iron Lad has got basically all the Ultimates there, either on video call or whatever.
But then they actually have like intelligent discourse, and Cap comes out and goes, "Well, I get why you're doing it."
So yeah, the biggest thing is the big reveal at the start, and I think again this was clued in such a subtle way leading up to that an experienced comic reader, didn't even realize there was a twist about this thing coming. Right?
Yeah,
we are shown in issues behind in like flashes of people seeing the Ultimates being killed by the Hulk in the the last issue when we died. I guess it must have been issue 8, I guess. So around that time. So they nearly got killed. Doom zapped them out just in time. And then they were like, oh, Iron Lad's dead. And it's like, turns out he's not dead. And I thought that him not turning out not to be dead was a bit like stereotropy comic book stuff. We now know that, and the reveal that Iron Lad has found out turns out Iron Lad. So for one thing, Iron Lad, the reason he's alive is he merged himself with the Immortus engine, which is the time machine, and he's been frozen at the point of death. Yeah. Right? Which I thought, great ultimate version of the original Iron Man needing the magnet to stop the shards going into his heart. Yeah. So great version of that. But because he's tapped into this time machine now, he's like, yeah, when you saved us, there's a weird thing where there's like almost two time streams like separating and merging back. Turns out they did get absolutely massacred by the Hulk and his Hulkling people, and Doom had to reverse time a bit to get to a point where he could save them again. Yeah. So that in itself is like, yeah, I did this without telling you all.
because I didn't want you all to know that you died. Like, it's quite, do you know what I mean? It makes sense, doesn't it?
This is a smart person plot, in that not that it's for smart people, but it's that all the characters are believably smart. Like, they're all making very believable decisions. Doom's like, I don't want to say anything because we agreed not to use time travel, but you'd all fucking died, so I kind of had to.
Yeah.
And he's like, I know you guys were going to be pissed off, but I'd do it again because it's for the cause, and you're all alive because of me, and, you know, fuck you for being angry. Like, he almost takes a little bit of that stance. And Iron Lad is like everyone's like, oh shit, like, should we talk about this? Like, and they have almost like a bit of a leading to a fracturing.
Yeah.
And then they're like, Iron Lad's like, actually, I think we should change up our strategy now, because we've not achieved barely anything. And I thought that was such a refreshing thing to hear in this kind of team up story of like normally it's like, oh no, something really bad's like, we were doing really well, like, you know, that journey of a hero story or whatever. Like, we were doing really well, now really bad things happen. Now it's the dark night of the soul, and we have to recoup and get back at it. This is just like, you know, those months we were trying to do shit, we ain't done nothing.
We've not achieved what we wanted to achieve.
Exactly. And that's the point where Captain America's like, buddy, Luke Cage, and I think it's America Chavez, like, they've actually done stuff. Like, they're really well. And Luke Cage's like, I can recommend some reading materials. But yeah, I really loved that this was a hero stopping and re-strategizing.
Yeah.
Rather than the trope, which I'm sure even you've seen, of everything's fucked. And like, well, you know what? We're just going to have to go out there and try our hardest. And it doesn't look good. Prime example, of the week, was in Avengers Age of Ultron, where they're going to stop Ultron. And someone's like, we're probably not going to survive this fight. And the Captain America's like, well, we'll fight together. And then someone's like, well, what if we die? It's like, then we'll do that together too. And it's like, that works there only because this is an Avengers film and we know you're going to succeed at the end.
Whereas here,
it feels like they're actually up against it.
Yeah,
and
totally.
they haven't got a choice now. So Iron Lad had this whole thing of like, we're not using time travel. Now he's like, we should use time travel because nothing else has worked.
Yeah.
Maybe you were right and I was being a dick. Like, and then Doom has this really kind of believable character thing of like, oh, I thought you were going to hate me and kick me out. Like, I was prepared for that. He was already on his guard to be like, well, fuck you, I'm leaving anyway.
Yeah.
You can't fire me, I quit. But he's like, no, we're not firing you. He's like, oh, well, I'll take back my resignation.
Yeah, this is it. I'll just throw that in the bin.
But it was kind of reading this, like reading the accurate, like the believable, realistic minute by minute character changes in this conversation.
People were reacting to things.
Yes.
Things were happening and people were actually reacting to them. Which I know sounds really bare minimum.
But for superhero comics, like that, this is raising the bar in that regard.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? It's really quite special.
And it was paced out in such a way where like Iron Lad's like, actually, I'm on board. And everyone's like, whoa, really? And then the few like dissenters, I think, were like, well, you might agree, but I know someone who might have something to say. Captain America, what do you have to say? Captain America's like, actually, I agree as well.
He's like,
what?
I agree. I disagree with some of your methods, but I agree. And again, it opens up more discourse because they'll go, yeah, Cap's actually probably got a point here. We need to work out, if we are going to do this, what it's actually going to look like. And that is exactly what happens when a bunch of people get together to try and do a thing. Yeah. Somebody has a good idea and you go, that's a great idea. How do we do that?
Yeah. And the point they get to the end, it doesn't, because they've all got their different things they should do.
Yeah.
And they don't even go, right, let's do this and see if this works now. The change they make is, instead of us doing our thing separately, we need to be more democratic. We need to have everyone doing as many options as possible, as many ideas and theories as possible, because we need to throw as much shit at the wall to see what works. Like, that's what we're at. Iron Lad literally describes it as, we were working top from bottom, we should be working bottom up now. Yeah. Like, everyone, we pull the ideas together, see what's the most chance of succeeding, and then just go ahead with that. Like, there's a point where I saw there were some comments on some online forums and some Reddit stuff. People were describing Doom as I was like, I knew he was bad, this Reed Richards Doom. He's a dirty communist. And I was like, I wonder what they mean by that. Turns out he uses the phrase, this world is a prison. What do you have to lose but your chains? And I was like, yes, brother.
Yeah.
Free the means. Seize the means of production.
Seize the means of production, brother.
So I thought, oh, that's what they were talking about. But yeah, and
Man,
also,
do people really still think like that?
no, it was joking. No, people weren't like, "Oh my god, this comic's communist." It was just like a funny, like, "I knew he was evil, dirty commie," like that kind of thing. But then also, great reference. What we were saying about everything in the previous issues coming back here, the whole Red Skull thing. When they were taking down the Red Skull and he disappeared at the last minute, but he makes the point of being like, what have you done for the world? Like, these people believe in me. Like, I give them something.
Yeah.
So that Captain America in this moment to now be like, we can infer what he means, but he's basically saying we need to give people a symbol to stand behind.
Yeah.
It's not enough for us to just work in the shadows and everyone thinks we're terrorists.
Very soon we're going to get our Ultimates Assemble moment.
Exactly, yeah. But the way he describes it is like, we need to give people something to die for.
Yeah.
And Ant-Man, see you later.
Yeah.
Ant-Man's like, I don't need something to die for. But he's right. Like, that's another arm of their whole plan. Like, Doom's going to do the time travel stuff. Iron Man's going to help with that and maybe rework the boxes and stuff.
And then, of course, it finally turns out that the Wasp is a double agent for the Hand, but Nick Fury is also kind of not fully invested.
Well, so here's the thing. Like, if we hadn't have read that one shot, we would just think, oh, Janet Van Dyne's an informant for Hand, and she's going to betray everyone. And Nick Fury is the guy she's feeding this information to. And Nick Fury literally says, you and your husband will be safe when we take out the Ultimates, right? But because we have read the one shot, then we go, is this a Nick Fury who has a what do you call it? Like a cycle of rebelling against his captors.
Yeah.
And if he does, what point in the cycle is he in now?
We know he's a year in, and we are leading up to a year in. So we know that everything that just happened happens just before.
I think we're past that point now.
Right, okay.
I think just because where the issue came out versus these issues. Also, in the one shot, he mentions having an informant. And the council are like, well, tell us who she is. Oh, tell us who the informant is.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I can't risk that. And they're like really offended because they're the top people. But he's like, I'm about to blow you all up, so I don't give a shit. So he's like, yeah, I can't trust you. And they're like, how dare you? So he mentions having an informant there.
How very dare you?
I've never been spoken to this. So
that's our impression of Grey Hulk.
Grey Hulk, yeah. So he's the guy from Phantom Menace, head of the Jar Jar people, the Gungans. Anyway, so yeah, because we've got that, we've been given this extra context from the optional reading of the one shot, which now for us, we're like, we have to read every one shot going forward.
Well,
what could we miss?
Totally.
Which just amazing for selling comic books, just
really
in general.
Really good marketing.
Exactly. But yeah, so I thought that was especially great as well, ending on such an interesting note. And I'm so excited to see what comes up.
Yeah, me too. I think next we need to do some more X-Men.
Yeah, let's get on Ultimate X-Men for sure. I've got one little surprise. We've run over. We're running late. You're flagging on energy. I've got one nice little treat thing for us, right?
Cool.
I'm going to send you something. So you remember we had all this cross Marvel DC stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
Batman versus Deadpool, first of its kind. It's all happening, right? There was a interesting contribution to this from one Chip Zdarsky.
Oh, hello.
Chip Zdarsky posted a copy of a script that he is currently working on as his contribution to the Marvel DC crossover. I've sent it to you. Can you read it on your phone?
Yes.
Okay. So his crossover is called Feige. And it's one page. We're going to do a little rendition of it, okay?
Okay, who are you?
I will read the narrative and I will voice James. That's James Gunn of DC fame now.
Right.
And you will voice Kevin Feige, the mastermind of the MC, right? So this is a interaction between James Gunn and Kevin Feige, right? And this is apparently page 36 of Zdarsky's fan fiction, right? So Kevin walks out of the restaurant and bumps into James.
Oh, sorry, James?
This is becoming a regular occurrence. On James, curious. A suit and tie? Wow. Must be an Avengers premiere. Kevin, embarrassed.
It's actually the new Guardians movie? The one directed by Colin Trevorrow?
Kevin looks quite sheepish. James is fine. Hands in pockets, playing it cool as always.
I'm sorry. I was going to tell you yesterday when we ran into each other at the gym. But I thought you'd be jealous or...
Kev, I'm directing Justice League. I don't have time to be jealous. James gestures to Kevin's hat. You wearing your hat tonight? I thought Downey was making fun of you for that.
Yeah, well...
Kevin touches the top of his hat, his eyes looking up. He's shy. His cheeks are a little flushed.
Some of us don't have hair as nice as yours.
Oh, Kev. James, still smiling. You look good without your hat. Handsome. Kevin, fully blushing now, looks down and to the side, pretending he didn't even register the comment.
Anyway...
So there we go. That is Zdarsky's Marvel DC crossover, a romantic shipping of Kevin Feige and James
And
Gunn.
the fact that one page is like, is labeled as page 36.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's obviously a joke. He's obviously just written that
Release
one page.
the Zdarsky cut. I want to see the whole thing now. I'm going to be extremely
I don't
disappointed
think there is
if
a
he
whole
doesn't.
thing, mate. I'm going to be honest with you. I think he wrote one page and labeled it as page 36
Stand
because
by
that's
it.
funnier.
Stand by it. I'm going to be disappointed if I don't get a full book. A full comic. At the very least, I want an Alan Moore inspired screenplay.
Buckle into your seats and make sure you've got a full pack of cigarettes, kids.
And I actually would for this.
Would you start smoking again for it?
Just to I think I'd need one after reading it.
What, just to calm yourself down?
Yeah, just sweet Christmas.
Good callback.
Good callback. All right. That's as good a place to end on, and I'm about to play a recording where it tells you all the things you need to do if you listen to this podcast, which you get for free.
But if you would like a little bit more context for the Thor stuff, do go to Myths of Sad Grown Ups and watch the Treasures of the Gods, and you will learn everything. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
And if Jamie sends me a link, I'll put it in the description.
Hey.
And thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please subscribe to get notified of our future episodes as well. And if you're feeling particularly generous, then please leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you're using. If you'd like to get in contact with us, then send an email to comicglitter@gmail.com. You can also watch videos by me on the Comic Stand YouTube page, which is linked in the description. Thank you, goodbye.